Now that you know the process behind which to look at a situation and design a nudge, it is time for you to participate in the final assignment for this course, the Nudge Challenge. What you're going to do in the Nudge Challenge is you're going to work on a topic and you're going to actually design a nudge as well as an experiment to test that nudge. And here's how it's going to work. I'm going to present you with two challenges. The first challenge is a challenge to reduce obesity, and the second challenge is a challenge to increase energy conservation. No matter which part of the world you live in, these are two issues that will dominate discussion in the years to come. Everywhere in the world, people are complaining about the lack of exercise, the lack of healthy eating options, and energy is always going to be a crisis topic for years to come. So we're going to focus on those two topics. Now, as we said, part of your task is to take each of these topics and figure out what precise behavior you want to change to actually help on one of those two dimensions. Let's think about obesity. Why do people become obese? Why do they become overweight? At the first cut, I can think of two different interventions. There's a set of interventions to get people to eat more healthy food. There's a set of interventions to get people to exercise and be more physically active. Pick one. Within that, think about some very specific behaviors that you want to change. For example, do you want to get people to go to the gym more often? Do you want to look at people who already go to the gym but get them to exercise more frequently? Or do you want people to simply stop reducing the use of their car and to walk more? Likewise, when you think about the consumption of healthy food, you can be very precise with the kind of behavior. Do you want people to buy more fruits and vegetables? Do you want them to eat more fruits and vegetables? Or do you want to increase the consumption of fruits and vegetables in restaurants and cafeterias? Likewise, when you look at energy conservation, there are many, many different things that you could do to increase energy conservation. Look at electricity. Do you want people to consume less, or do you simply want them to buy more energy efficient appliances? Be precise in the specific behavior that you want to engineer. There are three specific things that you need to do in order to complete the Nudge Challenge. Once you've chosen a topic, it is your job to think through, employ the processes we talked about, and propose a nudge solution. Second, we'd like you to think about an experiment that you can design and test the effectiveness of the nudge that you have just proposed. And finally, what you need to do is to complete an assignment online on the edX platform, as well as back up that assignment with some visual support. What's the visual support? Perhaps a short 60-second film clip, a video on YouTube that shows a mock-up or an example of your nudging intervention, or a photograph or an audio piece that you can upload onto any publicly accessible website that will host such support. So, in sum, you need to fill up the form, you need to provide a link to that specific website, and that, in essence, is the assignment for your Nudge Challenge. Let me be a bit more specific about the kinds of things that you need to do to complete the assignment. First, define for us the context in which the nudging is going to happen. Are you going to nudge people in a store? Are you going to do it in a bank? Or are you going to do it in a gym? Be very clear physically where the intervention is going to happen. Is it online? Is it offline? And also, don't forget to tell the reader about the geographic context in which this nudge is happening. Which country are you going to implement this nudge in? Which city in that country? Second, briefly think through the behavior change and articulate the specific behavior that you want to change as a result of the nudge. Third, map the decision-making process much like we did in the examples in the guide to nudging. Think through the different stages that people go through. Think about the various frictions, think about the bottlenecks, and then identify nudges that would actually help you address those bottlenecks. Fourth, make a linkage between that map that you've just drawn, the process that you've just identified, and some of the concepts that we've talked about in this class. In particular, we've talked about a lot of behavioral principles that range from mental accounting to overchoice to discrepancies between action and intention. Make sure that your analysis links up that bottleneck that you've identified with a specific concept or concepts from this class. Fifth, Describe the nudge. Talk about exactly what you would do to intervene with the nudge. Are you going to change information? Are you going to change the way in which it is framed? Are you going to change the choice assortment? Or are you simply going to put the user in a different perspective or a context when they make a choice? Be very clear as to how exactly the nudging intervention is going to work. When you think through your final solution, try and make sure that the nudge you come up with is simple and scalable. In other words, it should be easy to deliver and it should be easy to scale from an experimental setting where you're working, let's say, in one gym or one store to a much more larger nationwide scale. 6, design. Think about the design of an experiment that you would do to actually test the nudge. Tell the reader about the number of conditions you would have, what you would measure, and what metric you would use to determine if in fact the nudge is a success and the experiment is a success. If you plan to use multiple nudges in the experiment, outline a criteria of how you would go about selecting the final nudge based on the results of your experiment. And finally, write down a plan for the data analysis and the kinds of predictions you would make based on the nudge. These predictions could be simple main effect predictions, i.e., if I frame the changes in outcome as a loss versus a gain, I'm going to get a greater percent of people choosing the option. Or it could be an interaction effect, that I would see the difference between a gain and a loss frame if the dollar amount is high, but not if it is low. So again, make a connection between some of the concepts you use in this class and the design that you're going to report for your experiment. At the end of this, you would have actually gone through the entire process of nudging as we have talked about in this class. You would have applied some of the ideas that we've talked about. You would have applied the concepts of experimental design. And finally, you would have applied the processes that we've used to understand how to create a good nudging environment. And don't forget, next week, we'll spend a little bit more time talking about how to give people a crutch to make better decisions. So that is still another set of information that you could use in your nudging challenge.